Kansai Kollective. West side of Japan, we out here coolin', Zane and Nasa got connections. We know you got questions.
Back in Kansai. No, we've been here. You are the one that left.
I'm back. They've been here, and we're back on another episode of the Kansai Collective. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As always, Asa Questenberry joined with me, my host, co-host, whoever he is.
Zane, live in the Kansai, baby.
Kansai, Brandon, that nice bit. And joining with us today, the gentleman to my left, Alessandro. Please introduce yourself, good sir.
Hello, hello. Thank you, guys. Thank you, fellas. My name is Alessandro de Bellegarde. I'm a filmmaker and kind of 3D content creator based in Kyoto.
Content.
Say that a little louder, man, because I don't think the
Once more
audience
for the
could
people
hear.
in the back.
Okay, all right. So my name is Alessandro de Bellegarde. I'm a filmmaker and 3D content creator based in Kyoto.
Okay,
3D content creator.
That was my next question.
Ooh.
Please describe. Are you building houses in the metaverse, or what is 3D content creator?
No.
Ooh, okay.
We'll see. No, who knows? I mean, I'm always trying to keep an eye out for those things, right? What's going to happen next? But at the end of the day, I want to use technology to kind of preserve the things that I love about Japan, the way that Japan's enriched my life, especially in Kyoto.
Spicy.
And I'm from New York. That's where I came up. And
Nyack.
yeah.
Are you a Knicks fan?
Do they sound
Sports,
like that?
yeah.
Sports.
I do. I like sports. I like sports.
Okay.
I like sports ball.
You're
It's-
a rare breed, man.
Yeah.
From New York and not a sports fan.
No,
Interesting.
my father's gonna be like shaking his head. He's like,
Shame.
yeah.
Shame
the
on the
Jets.
New Yorker.
Okay, go New York Jets.
Oh,
But-
wow.
Okay,
Sorry.
fair enough.
But,
so from Nyack, what brings you here to Japan?
Well, I came here about 12 years ago. I came to Kyoto
vet.
right after I finished university. I majored in film production, and I had a wonderful opportunity to come as I wouldn't call myself necessarily a chef, but I was working as a cook.
Flipping up the work.
For at a great kind of cafe and pastry shop type of thing. We were making pancakes and cakes and pies and all kinds of
Did you
delicious
get a
stuff.
visa for that?
I did. My very first year
Your
I got
very first
here.
visa was a cooking visa.
Well, you know,
Times were different back
it
then.
was a very.
man.
This is
They were-
no,
they
for
were- they
real.
were letting
2010
people-
was a very
They were
different
letting
time.
people in for anything, man. You can't.
It's true. There were so few foreigners. At least, I mean, obviously, I didn't know many when I first got here. But even just seeing the way that the community has changed in Kyoto, but even just around Kansai,
Right.
You know, I left New York and wanted to hustle and had that kind of New York attitude that
Yeah.
I wanted to go to Tokyo.
Okay.
But I'm very grateful I came to Kyoto because I
Smart
felt
boy.
like that Kansai slow life definitely gave me an appreciation that I don't think I would have gotten the other way around if I had gone to Tokyo first.
So Alessandro, to me, this is super interesting because I mean, we've now interviewed a couple people, and I mean, Zane's up to 6 or 7 years. I'm 3.5 years, but 12. I mean, that's a significant. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
majority of your adult life.
It's basically my entire adult
Basically
life.
your
I
entire-
wouldn't even call myself an adult when I left America. Shoot. Yeah.
It's your entire adult life and it's your career, all based in Japan. But not only that, I mean, like when we talk to Tomo, who runs the deck here in Osaka, and other friends, like native Japanese people born and raised in this area or spend a lot of time in this area, they say all the time how Kansai, Osaka, Kyoto have changed so much in the last decade, so to speak.
big
So
time.
you can you attest to that? I mean, because have you always been based in Kyoto?
Always in Kyoto. And I've jumped around. I've been able to do a lot of work and spend short bursts of time in different cities. But at the end of the day, it's always my home base has always been Kyoto. And, especially in 2011 when we had the big earthquake, that was like a big deciding moment. It wasn't super deep into my time in Japan, but it was
stay here with the earthquakes.
Well, that was the thing. It's about coming to terms with my connection with my family, which is super important to me, but also just that life as I knew it, my identity as I knew it, was definitely coming to a point where you need to decide if you're going to stay in Japan and kind of persist through the kind of goals that I wanted to achieve, which at that time was still new and fresh. I didn't,
You said you came 2010ish, right?
Yeah,
So you're like a
2010.
year and a half in. Trying to
Yeah, it was a
decide,
year and a
am I-
half in, meeting new people that were really making a huge influence in my life and really showing me what my future could look like.
Number one
And-
influence, who was it?
Oh, shoot. Well,
First one that comes to your head, who is it?
it's interesting. I've had a wonderful family of, a chosen family of people here. There's a great professor named Kevin Ramsden
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
And hopefully he'll see this. He's a really wonderful guy. He's a writer and a teacher and just a wonderful individual who gave me a vision of what my life could be if I stuck it out and really,
Spicy.
It was something like 20 years or so was
Commit.
his anniversary around my 1-year anniversary. So now I'm 10 years in, he's 30 years in, and to see him and kind of, someone I really respect and look up to, it's cool to kind of have a
Made
vision.
something for himself.
Well, the thing is, I think all of us can understand as foreigners coming to live in Japan that there is no one path for foreigners. A lot of people teach English and things like that. But other than that, like even myself, I never had the opportunity to teach English, and I think I think that's probably very
props to
uncommon.
Alessandro. Yeah,
And
seriously.
I have a great respect for. I mean, my family is full of teachers, and I have a great respect for it. I've never had the I always say had the opportunity to do it, but it was just one of
the
those,
desire.
or the desire. Yeah, no, but I'm not qualified to teach English. Okay. So I think for me, it's I think that teaching and being able to impart some sort of knowledge or experience requires a real insight. And I think that
you need the right people, right?
Well, yeah, and I speak English, but I don't know if I can teach English, So I would like to hope that the things I can probably impart or the kind of knowledge, if I can teach something, hopefully would be maybe towards maybe some of the art that I create and things like that.
So Kevin's the big
interesting
influence.
for me is
Tell us.
the fact that when I first came here, I started with teaching English. So you meet a lot of foreigners who are teaching English and you spend a lot of time usually with Americans because Americans are the ones that are usually teaching English. But
Americans are usually the one?
Yeah, usually.
I worked with only British people when
really?
I came here. Only
Okay.
Brits.
I mean,
and
English
and
speakers who
Aussies.
come to Japan are basically most of us.
But
Special question.
I have a lot of French friends now, and they can't teach they can't teach English, right? So they have very different jobs.
Paths, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you came here, you didn't teach English, you started cooking as a chef. Like, what type of foreigners did you run into? Like, what type of jobs were they usually doing?
Well, that's the thing, is that when I first got here, especially of our age group, when I first got here, I had some friends at...
How old were you?
I was like 21, just about turned 22.
Okay.
It's crazy. You're a baby, man.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, I think back at it, and coming here, I was literally right out of school. It was a few days after graduation. I had focused a lot on my film studies at university because like I said, I mentioned the film direction, right? The idea was that I had only interacted with Japan through its media, and an opportunity to spend a year here, maybe doing something that was even separated from my goals as a filmmaker or whatever.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, at least you're getting inside the culture that you find so much inspiration from, and so I wanted an authentic experience that could, 1 year later, then return to the United States and do that plan.
As we all say, right?
Exactly.
6 months, 1 month in
Exactly.
Japan, then it gets its tentacles into you. And you never
Well,
leave.
why did you stay in Kyoto? I love Kyoto, but I think a lot of people say if you stay in Kyoto, you kind of get tired of it.
Bubble.
Yeah.
Bubble.
Well, it is a small community. It's a tight-knit community, and that's also, I think, a big motivator to try to maintain healthy connections, it's a family.
Do you think it impact so let's say you don't get in that community. Let's say you have, socializing is in your strong suit and, you don't get into this foreign community. Do you think that's a reason people may move out of Kyoto if they don't kind of make inroads with that crowd?
I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of communities, so it's not just one community,
right.
but we are all adjacent to each other, connected, and there is no version of Kyoto where everyone isn't just 1 degree of separation from each other. So it is important that you show up, you do your best work, and that's just from a professional standpoint. From a personal standpoint, well, yeah, you got to be honest, you got to be open, and you got to take, you got to have accountability. You got to be able to follow through with things that you need, and everyone succeeds and fails to a degree, but I think it's always about the intention. I think that in any community, but especially in a tight-knit, small community, like
especially
Kyoto.
when it's like. When we talk about being in Japan, I mean, we say tight-knit, but it's like the majority of people in your city, and by majority I mean 99%, don't speak your language. Sure. So of the people speaking English in this already, because Kyoto for Japanese people is tight-knit. Yeah. Right? So like when you condense that down to even like the foreign community there, I can't imagine. I mean, tight-knit is probably an understatement.
So like for people who don't live in Japan or Kyoto, right? Kyoto was a major city the capital.
Understatement.
Yeah, it was like
it is the
Palace
cultural heart of
Exactly.
the entire country.
Yeah.
I would say compared to like the old style New York, you know what I'm saying? And so they have a lot of pride there. So the other Japanese people from other prefectures, they kind of see Kyoto people as stuck up.
What do you hear about Osaka people being in Kyoto?
You know,
'Cause I hear all about the stuck-up Kyoto people. What do I mean, I know what they think, but what do you
that's
hear?
that's
that
the thing,
say?
right? So like there is an image of Kyoto people that it's a bit more of, it's a little kind of, there are walls, right? That it's kind of bougie and stuck up a little bit. But that's obviously there's
It's the center of the artisans in the entire
Yeah,
country.
it's-
There's I mean, even that alone, there's a reason it's like that. But
And, you know, I have a great deal of respect for that because I think people who spend generations perfecting things almost have a right to be a little bit kind of stick their nose up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know,
I've been making
you
this
earn
for
it.
400
You earn
years.
it.
Yeah.
And Osaka's kind of got that cool, more urban kind of like, it's a bit more edgy. Well, no, it's cool. Like, I definitely see that there are far more diverse sets of foreigners here doing interesting things in Osaka. And that's just the whole Kansai energy. Like, I feel like Kansai as, you know, versus what's going on in Tokyo. Tokyo is, it's the metropolis. It's New York, it's Rome, it's you know, it's Seoul, it's kind of Paris, that kind of energy, right? And so the whole world can keep doing what the world does in Tokyo. But when you're in Osaka and when you're in Kyoto,
adjust.
you got to do the Kyoto way, you got to do the Osaka way. And I think that's a healthy way for me, especially when I was leaving New York. I had a very, very New York attitude. And I think that I found that I'm my best self for sure in Kyoto because it really tempered a lot of my different kind of attitudes about things.
forces you to refine, right? And this is it's crazy you use that phrase "best self" because I just spent 5 weeks in the U.S. over the holidays, and I, you know, just talking with people, and I'm back there. I'm like, man, I gotta get back to Japan. You know, what's the issue? And I'm like, dude, I am my worst version of myself in my hometown, and out here, I'm the best. I don't know if it's. I mean, because we've built things, I've built things in this city that I didn't, and I left my hometown when I was younger. But for some reason, I just feel held to this, like, I hold myself to this higher standard here. And, you know, maybe in Tokyo, I mean, because I hear about people who go to Tokyo all the time, and they just get, you know, taken into the city and spit out.
Yeah.
Because you don't, like you said, you don't really need to adjust. I mean, you can keep doing, you can be an English speaker in Tokyo, never have any Japanese ability, and have no trade-off, you know, no fall off in your interactions. There's so many foreigners out there to interact with. So it's interesting. It's interesting how you put that, for sure.
Well, tying into some of the things we were even talking pre-show, we were even saying that, you know, finding your niche, I think, is really important. And I think that that's what Kyoto was able to help instill in me. It's like...
Showed you, put it right in front of you.
Well, and this is, I think, ties back into what we were talking about in terms of the attitudes of the different cultures of different cities. Now, Kyoto is a place where you have an artisan who's been doing the same thing. My father was doing it, my grandfather was doing it. And it's also not like a mega corporation throughout the entire world. It's that people in Kyoto know that if you need this, you go to this guy. If you need this, you go to this one. And that's kind of the attitude.
Been doing it for 1,000 years.
And that's the thing, is that it's about pride in what you do. It's about sticking to it. And also just like persevering through the ups and downs of things. You know, I have family in Italy, and you know, there's places in like Venice, for example, that is kept alive by the tourism, but it's also what's slowly killing the authenticity.
They
of
say
Venice.
the two cities in the world that suffer from over tourism to the point where they determine that as tourism to the point that it destroys the city for those that are born there from there, Venice and Kyoto. Like, if we talk Kyoto before COVID, I mean, you can attest to this.
They hit their like 5-year, 10-year goals within like the first year. It's crazy. We're talking
insane.
way explosive tourism in Kyoto. And as someone who came in before the boom,
Right, because you got to see it prior.
it was so different. And the thing is that it's not better or worse or anything. I mean, I'm happy for the industries that were able to benefit from that real increase in business. But COVID really then put a halt on that.
You've seen full on, like, I mean, if you compare it to the Japanese bubble economy, I mean, you saw the before the build up, the peak, which is like 2019, it was Japan's peak tourism year ever.
it's
It was
crazy.
like 40 million people came to Japan in 2019, and then it went to like zero. Like 2020, I mean, it all got shut down. It's like
It's
the bubble
still shut
burst,
down.
right? It's still shut down.
crazy.
So I mean, I have a couple friends in Kyoto, and they talk all the time where, like, before COVID, you know, the locals would complain all the time about tourism, and now they're like, oh,
it would be kind of nice to have it back.
I wouldn't mind.
So just to tie it back in, is you had asked me before about like 3D content. What does that mean exactly? And I think part of my perspective is that, you know, especially with COVID, it's really focused it in, is that, you know, Kyoto has enriched my life. It's made my life far more diverse in the way that I see the world and the way that I want to live my life and the way that it's impacted my life. And I can hear where you're coming from as well. You know, going back home, it's the culture shock now is not
reverse
being in
culture
Japan,
shock,
it's
right?
going
It's
back
crazy.
home. And
Yeah.
I, you know, without commenting on, you know, best self or worst self, you know, I have, you know, I love the people that I came up with and my family. It's
Of course.
foundational to who I am. But, you know, I needed to be here to really find what that was all about. And so in regards to like mentioning, I was saying, going to bring it back to the 3D content stuff, part of the ways that I try to use the media that I create, whether it's you know, digital archiving through 3D scanning or these types of things, it allows me to export the things that I find so enriching and have benefited my life in Kyoto to the world without mining things that are taking away from the city.
And you're adding a value add because you're preserving it.
Well,
right?
we had a terrible fire a year or two ago in Okinawa. Huge
that
temple,
temple
just
gone.
all gone in a
Gone,
fire,
gone,
right?
gone, right.
The goal that I have with the 3D scanning and all these types of things, this digital archiving, is to preserve these things. Now, obviously, losing the original is not. I mean, you can't. They're irreplaceable. But you know, in terms of education and utilizing modern technology, we have an opportunity to really. You know, Japan has such a deep-rooted connection to its cultural identity, to its long history, and as Americans, it's hard to even
You can't comprehend
fathom
it, man.
that.
We've been like
Yeah.
250
You know?
years total.
And so, if we can use modern technology, my grandfather, for example, is an immigrant from Italy who came to the United States. He has zero concept of what Japan's all about. He has no idea. It could be on Mars as far as he knows. But over the years, when I first came here, photographs helped bridge the gap.
Right.
Video, that's kind of my background. I love that. That helped bridge the gap. But now with the 3D content, whether it's VR content, whether it's like you know, the 8K 3D video, or if it's the 3D scanning,
3D scanning,
this
whatever it might be.
allows, with the modern tools that my grandfather knows how to use on his iPad, he can engage and participate in the lifestyle now that I chose, the same way that he chose to leave his home to come to the United States.
So there's like so many different arts in Kyoto, and I mean Japanese culture in general. What are you trying to preserve of the Japanese?
Is it the architecture?
culture? Yeah.
Is it the actual arts in the sense of like calligraphy or dance or kabuki or no, or what is your really gets you excited?
Well, what's nice is that one of the most interesting things that a lot of us, I think, get to benefit from is that the likelihood that the three of us would have ever met, virtually, it's zero, right?
Bring him on as a new co-host, man. He's spitting. He's reading our minds.
Well, it's just the idea is
very
that
good.
there's a commonality in our lives that brought us here, and that's how we met, and that's the thing we share. Perhaps maybe the only thing at that
The covenant.
Right.
Well, you know, and you know, I didn't have a background in architecture, but one of my closest friends now has a real passion and interest in, you know, Drew, he has the mind for that kind of art that I just now, like I like to call myself a filmmaker, but I can learn from his aesthetics, his fundamental ideas. And you as a fashion designer, you open up ideas to me that are different and new.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that when you ask about what kind of stuff do I want to preserve, you know, like for example, the machiya in Kyoto is a rapidly
What is a machiya?
A machiya is a kind of traditional Japanese style home. You've seen old samurai movies, you've seen machiya. But the idea is that, you know, Kyoto is one of the few places that was unaffected during World War II.
Right.
And so the idea is that that we could use the modern technology to really, right now at this changing point where, you know, modernization, there's a constant turnover. You know, we can salvage the not just the aesthetics and all these things, but the
雰囲気.
well, yeah.
The feeling, 雰囲気, the atmosphere, the
Yeah.
feeling, the everything that encompasses that
Everything.
building, the settings, where it's in.
Yeah.
And just to backpack of what you're saying, man, because my background was architecture and urban planning.
Sure, excellent.
So I find, you know, what I love about Kyoto, because when I first came to Kyoto, I had like, I wouldn't say the worst experience, but the first time I visited Kyoto was late 2018, 2019, the peak tourism. I'm like, I'm gonna go see some temples. Every temple I went to at that day, there was a 45-minute line just to go in.
Yeah.
It was
crazy,
insane.
man.
So I was like, oh, thank God I live in Osaka. But over time, you know, we've had the benefit. I've told people, you know, being in Japan during COVID has allowed me to experience once in a lifetime things. You know, one of the most over touristed places in the world.
Wow.
I can visit and it's empty. There's no one there.
Great.
So what's crazy with the buildings and the architecture is we have this period in Japan where Japan didn't choose industrialization. It was kind of thrusted on them by Western society.
Sure.
And because of that, they rapidly abandoned a lot of Japanese aspects. So when you look at, you know, rebuilding in different places, the machiya, the old parts of Japan, a lot of people in the country are really quick to kind of, you know, get rid of. And they replace it with something like aesthetically wise and architecture wise, it might be safer and it might be more affordable, but the雰囲 is gone. I mean, the feeling is gone. So Kyoto, like you said, is one of the few places where you experience not little pockets of it, but the whole city. I mean, it's all out there, right?
I mean, just you see it in the texture of the entire city. You're there. It's impossible to separate its ancient nature from the way you live your life. And as modern, you know, we're modern guys. We're trying to do forward-thinking stuff and trying to innovate, which I think Kyoto has a reputation for not necessarily being known for innovation. But I find that, like mentioning before, you know, coming as outsiders, we're bringing what we are to the space. And, you know, how much of it is accepting the new way of our lives here in Japan, but then also integrating the healthiest parts of our previous lives into this space. And I think that there's going to be a lot of very interesting innovation happening, not just in foreigner run spaces, but also just places that are collaborative. You know, we're in this space and, you know, and
well,
mentioning...
when you talk about the deck, when you talk about Garden Lab, I mean, especially the places that welcome this interaction and the mixing of, I don't want to say mixing of worlds, but places that are equally excited to have a foreign community as well as bringing in local Japanese. That's where you really see this magic. I mean, that's where you get the Western and the foreign aspects become really, really refined, and the traditional Japanese aspects get seen in a new light or gone about in a different way. And that's where you get some of like the most amazing things, in my opinion.
Like, for me, I really think that foreigners are going to play a huge role in keeping the Japanese culture alive, because Japanese people, a lot of them have not been overseas, you know, and they've been doing things that's been in their culture traditionally.
Some, of course, but we can't say the majority. Right?
Yeah.
I find that especially in Kyoto, lots of my friends that came up in Kyoto moved out to get out of the small town feel, because that is what it is to them. And then when they return for times, they'll see me and I'll be still so excited, even all these years later, about the little nooks and crannies.
How do you like it?
And they're like, you know, I do remember now that Kyoto's kind of badass. And that's kind of the attitude, is that I want to, you know, for example, my mother is writing a book right now. And a little plug from mom.
Plug the book.
But her whole thing is that, you know, she was able to integrate her experience coming here with me to Japan. And in her next book, she'll be preparing a story here in Kyoto.
Her next book?
Well,
that implies there are previous books.
Well, she got her first book published last year, and I'm super proud of her. Winter Witness.
Way to go,
Mama
Mama Dukes.
She's
We're
the
proud
mom.
of you. Please send us a signed copy
She's
here
to
the deck.
I'll bring one. I got one. I'll bring one for you guys. I'll definitely do it next time.
Sick.
But as a series of these little mystery novels, I'm so proud of her to really realize what she's been working so hard on so much in her life, to really kind of manifest this thing that it's been her calling for so long. And to think that I could have a small influence in the way that she integrates even Kyoto into now the way that she expresses her art, it's just exciting. And I hope that in the same way that jazz exists in a strength here in Japan, the way that I don't think it does in the United States anymore. I mean, obviously you have pockets of it, but there is a mass market for jazz in Japan, because it's that old American cool that they find so interesting. And so piggybacking off what you said, Zane, it's like I do think that foreigners will be integral to the preservation of some of the most, some of the niche things. I mean,
Isn't it funny how we're so quick to reject what is ourselves and so quick to adopt something that's not us, right? Because exactly that. I mean, like you said, I mean, in here jazz is preserved because it's cool, it's not Japanese. And then for foreigners, I mean, you take your pick at what we find cool in Japan, and it stays with us. It's not something that wears off. I mean, like you said, you meet people, and I've been here years, you're getting on years, and it's still there. You still, like I say all the time about Osaka, man. I go out in the city, like whether it's a night out, and there's always something new I'm finding.
Yeah.
There's always
Always.
something new, and
Always.
I've yet to lose like the kira, like the excited stars in your eyes about just being in Japan.
Well, in coming from New York, I've seen this much of New York, but of course I know everything about New York.
right.
But that's
Fact.
it's,
Right,
but
right.
but it's the attitude that you have. It's what you bring to it. And living in America, living in New York, I feel like I was given the seed of what I can be, and then I can grow it and cultivate it here. And I find that I can, you can do it anywhere. And I think one of the most interesting things that I've been able to do with a lot of the 3D work and some of the film work I'm doing is about exporting the culture in a way that doesn't take from
Or degrade it.
or degrade it. You know what I'm saying? Like you can only, people come to Kyoto and then it's a quiet, gentle place, and then it's just abrasive and in your face, and that's not what Kyoto's all about. If I can, for example, a few years ago we did the Grammy show and we did the Grammys. We brought some meditation kind of. Thank you.
Cheers.
Some shout out to all my friends out at Taiga and Monden-san and stuff. But
Guys are
the
the
idea
best.
is that we were able to create VR content as meditation content for the celebrities at the Grammys. Now, that's obviously a wonderful opportunity that I wish I could say that I earned super hard, but I like to think that maybe my work over time got me there. But the idea is that,
gotta get there.
but it's about a community of people that trusted me, and I can put my best self forward so that we can achieve something together. And you become the person who can do it once you start doing it. And so I feel like that was, for example, a way to bridge the gap culturally, where you coming on it's the red carpet, everybody's hot stuff and doing their thing, and I'm going to talk to George Clinton about Earth, Wind and Fire, about Kyoto. Now, obviously those are
You
like
way to bridge it.
So
right?
let me ask you a question, Alessandro.
Yeah.
People maybe who are interested in film or in that field, and they want to come to Japan. Do you feel like there's many opportunities for filming out here?
How do you get in?
I mean, here's the thing. I think this is I think especially as well, you're talking about just the business development and the vision that you have about what do you want to do. At the end of the day, you can do what you want to do anywhere. But people obviously have a passion for Japan. Obviously, we're here. But the idea is that I think in Japan specifically, if you want to come here and make your art, whatever that is, I can maybe speak on video. So, well, you gotta
be committed.
You gotta do the work. And the idea is that when you're here, your work is what defines you. It's not about you. Obviously your community and there's a family.
Man.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think your ability to integrate in a healthy way the Japanese way of doing things will be useful, especially as foreigners, because it is it's a new experience for us. But at the same time, being true to yourself and all those.
I say a lot of time, it's sticking to yourself. But to me, like how I view my growth here in Japan, it's refining. I'm a more refined version.
For sure.
Yes.
Yep. Same.
I've seen things in Japan, and the things that I like, I've allowed to make myself better. I've adhered to the Japanese way in certain aspects that to me I view as just refined myself overall. But in a different note, what's really interesting, like you just said, coming to Japan, there's so many ways to do it. I think, as you're saying, how do you get in? How do you do it? It's just about getting here first. Once you're here, the doors, countless more doors open up, but you just got to get here first.
Well, it's weird. I'm an extroverted introvert. I'm an introverted extrovert. It's all those things simultaneously. So getting out to meet new people is exciting, but also harrowing at the same time. But
I think that's
you got to
for
just
everybody.
move forward. It's just
That's a
one
fact.
step at a time type of thing. And I think that's one of the things that's been most useful about living in Kyoto or in Kansai in general is that, especially coming out of
Kansai,
New York,
baby.
I want to just full aggression, go for it, hustle. And that's my New York attitude. But it's about tempering it with
What works here?
Just one step at a time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that
spicy.
one of the things that I was very much tied into what you were saying before about being cultivating what makes you here. Now, as foreigners, we don't have a set role in this country.
Right.
And I think
English
that,
teacher.
well, yeah, exactly. English teacher.
English teacher.
But in many ways, as a filmmaker, for example, when I do video projects, there are certain things that I'll do that other Japanese videographers or filmmakers, are not expected or not necessarily not expected.
It's not the way they do it.
But it's not the way they're supposed to do it. So lots of times I'll shoot these traditional festivals. And my goal is obviously always to, like I say, don't put your shoes on the tatami, which is like you don't put shoes on tatami mats, right? The idea is that you don't want to you don't want to step beyond the parameters of what's appropriate. But like I'll push
within it, right.
to do things that my friends who will help me who are Japanese, they'll say, you know, can I go on top of the exactly.
Yeah.
Can I go on top of that thing can I get on the ladder and do that? Like, no. Now to them that makes sense because as a Japanese presenting person, it's like, no, your place is defined and it's not the thing, right? So I think leaning into the advantages that I have is as you know, when I'm in Japan, I'm the filmmaker from New York. When I'm in America, I'm the filmmaker from Japan.
Kansai Kollective, west side of Japan, we out here coolin', Zane and Nasa got connections. We